Hi, this is Hot Topics. We're live with Chris Murphy, Director and Chief Strategy Officer at ThoughtWorks. Hi.
Hi Peter, thank you.
So, why don't you start with telling us a little about yourself and ThoughtWorks?
Sure. Well, ThoughtWorks, we're a global consultancy. We've been around about 21 years now. And our mission is to revolutionise the IT industry. And we do this by working with customers around the world and helping them achieve their big goals, their most ambitious missions, using the power of technology.
So, could you, give us a couple of examples? Who have you worked with? What have been their greatest visions?
Yeah, so we work across a variety of different clients and industries. So we've worked with governments from here on the African continent, in Southeast Asia, to helping them gain greater interaction with their citizenry using technology. Mm-hmm. And we work with companies from maturing startups through to the largest of organisations that are being disrupted through these startups to help them figure out ways of engaging with their customers to drive new products and new offerings to market using the latest advances in technology.
So, how long has ThoughtWorks been going on for?
So we've been around, I think we're in our 22nd year.
Wow.
We started in the proverbial basement in Chicago, and now we're across, I think, 14 countries in 31 offices.
So in that time, you've probably seen a lot of change. What's changed the most and how have you adapted?
Yeah, I mean, fundamental change across the industry. When we started that 22 years ago, we were a leasing software company. We worked in Forte, and obviously the world has fundamentally changed and moved on since then. I think one of the key shifts, certainly that we see, is how technology is being viewed. So for a large part of the last 20 years, technology has really been seen as an efficiency play. It's been about how do we use IT and technology to standardise things, to automate things, and it's been focused very much on the back office. And then about 5 years ago, we started seeing the shift to where it was more about engaging with customers, but it was still very much an add-on, an adjunct to traditional businesses. They had their traditional business, and then they had a digital business, a digital play. The real shift that we're seeing now, certainly over the last 1 or 2 years, is that has moved to the next progression. So technology and software is no longer about efficiency per se or add-ons. It now is the business. It's the key enabler and key means in which many different organisations, whether they be commercial, whether they be governmental, whether they be in the social sector, are looking to have an impact in the world.
And are there any key sectors which you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as an organisation, we tend to look within sectors and focus on the players within those sectors that are most ambitious. So for instance, we'll look for those that are the most disruptive, or looking for those that have been the most disrupted and wanting to tackle that. Having said that, there are certainly a few industries and sectors where we're probably seeing the most movement. So one of those is retail. Retailers, it's a very competitive sector. It's very consumer focused and customer based. So retailers are always looking to understand how do they engage more with their consumers to gain the upper hand, to gain a competitive advantage. Another area which is seeing a lot of change, a lot of technological adoption is the travel industry and airlines. So, for instance, I think traditionally airlines were not someone you really dealt with directly. You went through a travel agency. Travel agencies have been very rapidly disintermediated, and the airlines, which is also a very competitive industry, are looking for ways and means to gain loyalty and interaction with their customer base. And then there's some fascinating, further out there sectors and industries like the car industry. And that's being affected in a number of ways. For instance, a lot of the big manufacturers are now looking to engage directly with potential buyers. So most buyers will look to research their car online with the manufacturer before they make a buying decision. And some of those manufacturers are going the next step and then enabling you to order your car online, have it shipped out to you, have a test drive before you decide whether to go ahead with it or not. And then, of course, you see the next generation, which is the driverless cars, the likes of Tesla, who really, if you think about it, are a computer that just happens to have a few moving parts. And those organizations are practicing many of the software practices which you see across a whole range of more traditional sectors, where they're constantly pushing updates to the applications running on the vehicles and tuning them based on data that's coming back. So there's some fascinating areas and implications across multiple sectors.
So how do you see yourself growing? Do you have any predictions of where ThoughtWorks might have dealings with or workings with in the future?
Yeah, for us, there's two key ways that we would grow traditionally. One is geographic. So we've been very interested in exploring not just traditional markets, but understanding the role that technology has to play in economies outside your traditional global north of Europe, North America, and Australia. So, for instance, we've had offices for some time in Brazil, in China, in India, and we're doing a lot of work now in the markets for those countries. And this is actually quite fascinating, seeking to understand how we take technologies and paradigms that we've learnt a lot and become quite mature in, say, Europe, and then apply them in, say, rural India in an environment that is very much more resource constrained. So that's an area of interest to us.
Okay.
And then obviously there's a number of areas of technological advance which we're very interested in. An area that we're spending a lot of time on is around data and implications of data, security and privacy. So we know, for instance, that I think the stat is that in the last 2 or 3 years, more data has been generated and collected and collated than in the previous X million years of history. And that is only going to continue more and more and more. We've got a number of clients who've gone through this phase where they've moved from where they're saying technology is our business to where they're saying actually data is our business. And that import of business as a key differentiator, as a key business asset, is really changing how organisations think about it, look at it, protect it, secure it. And then, of course, looking at the role of hardware and connected devices and how they affect how we think about technology. So we're seeing all these new sensors, all these new actuators. They're connected into the internet. They're creating data. They're consuming data. What does that mean? What does that mean for how we interact with technology? What does it mean for the opportunities for us? What does it mean for the threats?
So it sounds like you've helped a lot of people and a lot of companies. In your experience, what's been the most useful thing someone should know before setting up their company and trying to attack the markets?
So from my perspective, it's there's two aspects to it. The most successful businesses are those that, one, stay very connected with their customers, understand the market and have a proposition that they're able to take to market and test, and a well-defined mission, so to speak. And the secondly is an understanding of technology and how to use technology to enable that well-defined mission. And if there's one thing I think that we see most holds organisations back, it's this belief that technology needs to be something that's big and sophisticated and complex. And instead we say, let's take that right back. Let's understand what we're seeking to enable using technology, and then enable that in the simplest, most lightweight, flexible, and preferably open way. And test that and then build upon that, because that allows flexibility, it allows nimbleness, it allows agility. And that's a lot about our organisation and what we seek to promote.
And another thing your company seeks to promote is advocate for social change. So, what kind of things does ThoughtWorks advocate? Are there any specific charities that you help or any causes that you associate yourself with?
Yeah. So, again, we look at it as what can we bring to the world and what can we bring to organisations and governments to help enable them. So we're not an NGO, we're a commercial organisation, but we can work with organisations to help them use our strength and passion, technology, to enable their outcomes. So as an example of that, an area we're really passionate about is healthcare. And healthcare is a human right. So something that's not for just a privileged few, but that's for humanity as a whole. How can we use technology to enable change and positive outcomes in that space, for example? So one area we've worked with, we're working in rural India and Nepal with a number of hospitals to build an open source hospital management system. And that's built on top of 3 existing open source products. And what it enables those hospitals to do is hospitals who've never had any access to technology, never had any notion of medical record systems, to implement these systems, to maintain them themselves. They can be put on infrastructure which is quite constrained, low-powered computing devices, low-bandwidth environments, but have a very effective outcome on health outcomes in that sector. More recently, our Director of Global Health, Dr. David Walton, has actually been in Sierra Leone working with the Ebola treatment centres, and working in conjunction with Save the Children, we actually saw an opportunity to create to use one of these open systems, open medical record systems, to create a solution. And the problem they have there is that everything that's in the red zone, the area that's treating patients in Sierra Leone, can't come out again. So no notion of paper-based medical records can be taken outside. It all gets burnt. And everyone's in these big suits that you will have seen on television, which makes it very clumsy to write anything or use electronic devices. So based around iPads and Android devices similar to that, with a waterproof covering that can be used with chlorine across it, we created a customized medical record system with big buttons that can be used very simply by the doctors and medical staff in the Ebola treatment clinic, and has really helped dramatically increase the health outcomes. So it's an example of where we look to use our skills.
So you must have a lot of people in your organisation to be able to work all across the world. I mean, how many people work in ThoughtWorks?
We're actually reasonably small for our geographic spread. We're quite unusual in that way. So we have about a little over 3,000 people, and those 3,000 people are spread around, as I said, 31 or 32 offices around the world. But what we really look to do is look to hire people who are passionate technologists, and then can take that passion and that expertise to enable many thousands or hundreds of thousands more across the organisations that we work with.
And is there anything right now that you're particularly excited about?
Look, there's a whole range of, it's a great time to be in the technology sector, and so much to be excited about. I know it was about 20 years ago now that I was working for a startup that was working with the Apple Newton. And of course that was the device that Apple brought out that had handwriting recognition, and everyone was convinced was going to completely change the way that we use technology. And it's history, it didn't. And the reason it didn't is I think technology was too immature. And similarly, we talked about cloud forever. And I think everyone basically gave up on cloud about 5 years ago. And now it's almost ubiquitous. We use cloud without knowing it. And we're at a stage now where a combination of low-powered chips, low-powered communication protocols like Bluetooth, reasonably ubiquitous high-speed bandwidth, powerful computing devices, it's all come together into this almost multiplicative effect that really enables these outcomes which we've never been able to almost conceive of before. And so we're seeing exciting things in the areas of design and interfaces. So we've moved beyond the traditional interface of working with punch cards to keyboards, from keyboards to becoming very comfortable and familiar with touch interfaces. And then it's what's beyond that. So, a lot of the gaming industry is leading here. Even things like Xbox Connect, where they look at, gestures and movements. devices which can look at where your eyes are going. Recently I was at a conference where someone had a device that was involving haptics, and this is when you're at a nightclub or something, you hear that boom, 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 beat using sound waves to look at how they provide feedback from a touch perspective.
Useful.
And even just these little incremental improvements.
Yeah.
So someone else had hacked an Android together, so that rather than just touch, it also used the gyroscope. You could respond to if you tapped your nail on the back, or if you tapped your knuckle, and it could tell these half a dozen different variants of ways of touching it, and thus get different results. So the way we interact with devices, the way we interact with computers, and the way gestures and design will, the roles that gestures and design will play, I think is an area where we're going to see some very unexpected changes over the next few years.
So these are quite exciting projects that you're working with, and obviously they've approached you to help. But how do you stay on top of your competitors?
So for us, I guess there are two types of organisation essentially that you can be. You can be a follower, or you can be a leader. And for us, I think our history is very much one of, it goes back to our mission of seeking to revolutionise the IT industry. I think you do that through seeking to identify what is wrong in the industry, and then seeking to lead the change that it enables to move that forward. So, for a long time for us, one of the key challenges with the industry was that it was bogged down with what you'd only call bloat. These big, overly complex projects, overly complex pieces of software, which were inevitably multi-million pounds or dollars. They go over time and over budget, and they often wouldn't solve the problem that was being sought to be solved. So we sought to address that by being very early adopters of the principles of software development that are enabled through Agile, and we helped to really drive and understand that. Similarly, to push that through to the notion of continuous delivery, which is enabling fully automating to enable the regular and simple deployment of software into production. Enabled very much by advances in software tooling and cloud, and more recently seeking to understand how design and interaction design can become much more embedded in an iterative process. The thing we're really interested in at the moment is actually taking that a step further into what's called the lean enterprise. So a lot of big organisations are now stuck with this challenge, in that they've got years and years of legacy technology, which has been built up for the right reasons, but now they're being threatened by these light, nimble, new startups who don't have the history of all this legacy in the silos. So helping larger organisations and governments and NGOs understand how they can take advantage of the legacy they have, how they can simplify it, how they can realign it around outcomes as opposed to internal silos, and really help them become effective competitors and players in the digital market. So that possibility is really interesting because with those organisations and their resources, the possibility to really drive the industry forward is exciting.
So you're the go-to company to reinvigorate something?
I think so. I mean, that's certainly where we seek to work. I mean, we're passionate about technology, and we're interested in learning new things and applying them. And the way we get to do that as a consultancy is to align ourselves with organisations who are similarly interested in the possibilities and the ambitions, and work with them together to really help and realise the possibilities. And that can be helping them understand what the possibilities are, so innovation labs, ideation. It can be having identified the products to build that using lightweight, modern software development approaches, or it can also be just looking at the morass of technological legacy and infrastructures there, and helping understand how we can integrate these new digital experiences with that technological legacy, and to really help drive the organisations forward.
Thank you, Chris. It's been brilliant.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.